Well, what I think that the irony of it is that at least within the Biden administration here in the U.S., there's clearly been this desire, Google's lawsuit recently to focus on some antitrust stuff. And what is interesting about these regs is I think they have the very strong that they're very likely to actually increase market consolidation
Yes.
because it's going to be increasingly difficult for non-tech companies to actually meet these compliance requirements and to deal with it. And I think what's challenging here, and this is going to lead into the other story that Oracle has this blog post about the degradation of government IT cloud security standards, and it's relevant because it's sort of cloud is the closest precursor we have to this big AI movement in terms of how it's evolved and how it is arguably done more to consolidate the power within enterprise IT into a very small handful of very large tech companies than any other space before it, right? I mean, basically we had IBM at the very beginning, and then this constant march to decentralization and this heterogeneous environments that were very diverse. And then the cloud sort of forced all that to reconsolidate into different hands, but into a very small number of hands. And so I think, if I'm an enterprise IT leader looking at this regulatory landscape and the ambiguity and the uncertainty, it pushes you to these major cloud providers, these major tech providers, really cloud, AI, everything, because you realize, hey, I've got a better shot of being in compliance if I'm relying on them to do it because that's what they're focused on. And so I'll let you cue it up because honestly, this is starting to get above my pay grade. But this Oracle blog talking about some specific aspects. But the big thing from my standpoint in looking at this is that it reinforces for me, if I'm an enterprise IT leader, why I am turning to any of the cloud providers, whether that's cloud or Google or Microsoft or Amazon, because I can't possibly get my head around all of this. And while this blog is making the point that they may have vulnerabilities, I can almost guarantee they're still going to be more secure than anything I can afford to put out into the market just because of my exposure. So I'm curious what your take, and maybe you can tee up what this Oracle blog post is really talking about for everybody.
Yes. So we don't normally bring up vendor specific blogs, but this Oracle one got my attention, talking about the slow degradation of government IT cloud security standards. And the basic idea here is that Oracle is arguing that there are certain classes of government data that are less suited to the public cloud, and that the rush to this is happening because the hyperscalers are economically incentivized to sell to the government and make money, but that these data breaches and the AI gaps that exist as a result of the public cloud are not necessarily good for sensitive data. Of course, Oracle has a very vested interest in this as a company that has long been in military and defense and other sensitive government data and IT environments. So Oracle is making this case, but the economic incentive aside, it is interesting to me that the one point that they really bring up here is specifically around NATO and their Appendix C, which allows for the storage of classified, restricted data into the public cloud. Of course, Oracle is saying, no, of course you shouldn't do that. But I think at this point, we have to start making honest assessments about how good our own private ability is to secure data. So governments have to ask themselves, are we really in a place where we can do the best possible job of securing data? Or is this something where honestly the Amazons and Microsofts of the world might be better at it than we are?
You mean and the oracles, right?
Yes.
I think I think what is interesting. I mean, clearly this is this is not meant as a slam, right? This is clearly on brand for them. This is clearly part of their story, and good for them that they're doing what they should do, which is they're taking a defensible position in the market and saying we're better in this part, and then producing content to help people understand it. So good for them on that.
Mhm.
They clearly have an interest in this. They're clearly, making hay with going to market saying we're focused on this high level of security that's necessary, and the public cloud providers aren't. The part that I struggle with is they're not really saying, hey, keep it all private, right? They're simply trying to make the case you should be on cloud, but you should be on our cloud, right? That's effectively what they're saying. Um, and the hard part is I think that the lines, at least from a security standpoint, have completely blurred. I mean, unless you're the NSA and have a completely air gapped network, everyone is attached to the internet. Everyone has a threat surface.
Mhm.
And so it's really, really difficult to even draw any distinction between public cloud, private cloud, all of it, all that really is determining is where it's located, who's managing it, and so from that standpoint, if you look at our greatest breaches, they've been on privately run environments that the government is operating. And so, I mean, I remember having this conversation with some of the folks at, what the heck was it called now, but I forgot the military's, they have a joint data operation. Name is
Mhm.
escaping me at the moment. And I remember talking to some of the execs there, and they were actually the ones making the case that it made sense to move into very tightly controlled public cloud environments because they could actually improve their security profile and posture than what they could afford to do on their own. So I think it's an ongoing challenge. What I think is interesting, bringing it all the way back to the regulation, one of the holdups that I think still exists, and certainly part of what the case Oracle is making here, is that the security standards and the regulatory standards don't keep a pace, right?
Mhm.
They are written for a world that existed a decade ago and do not really reflect. And the biggest challenge with that is it just leaves us again back to the article. It creates ambiguity, uncertainty. We don't know if we could be held liable for this, and so therefore it constrains us, and that's just not good for anybody. So this is why I continue to have concerns and challenges with regulation, but I also struggle because I know we need it, at least at some level, and that's what makes this hard.
Yeah, so we've been treating the gold standard as basically physical air gap between a computer and the rest of the world instead of thinking about, well, there are physical issues, structural issues, logical issues, connectivity issues, all of these different things that really define whether something is truly air gapped and separate from the rest of the world or not. And it's not as simple as simply defining a specific distance or a specific uh, physical connectivity issue in a time when we have all sorts of wireless and other connectivity capabilities, all sorts of different ways to bring data from one place to another. That with all of that in place, we have to actually think about what it means to separate your data and your processes and your models from everything else.